Pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to films I should have talked about years ago. And so now, here we go with another bit of an installment thing going on here. But I will, of course, have that resolved. Basically speaking, though, if I'm going to be picking something else to talk about, I feel like that the Marvel Cinematic Universe keeps on getting in the way here, so maybe it's about time that I should pick at least something from there to talk about that I probably would have at least given it my take on. Because, well, there's just so many of them to choose from. I suppose that it's been a bit difficult for me to be very specific on that whole entire thing. Which one to pick, which one to review the most, but most importantly, which details of the one that I want to review the most. If I had to pick any of them though, I feel like that the one that I've watched the most was Captain America Civil War, released in 2016 as a bit of a continuation that came on between Avengers Age of Ultron and Avengers Infinity War. Civil War basically gave us a whole new twist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Basically, the breakup of the Avengers. This film, of course, stars the famous Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Chris Evans as Captain America, along with various other actors as the other different Marvel heroes throughout the entire series. At least with all the ones that are still alive. But then, of course, you have yourself Vision, who is played by, well, the old Paul Bettany. But this film also does introduce Spider-Man to the series, because after all, the Sony Spider-Man reboot series, which starred the one and only Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker and Spider-Man, had not necessarily done so well, especially with the sequel not really getting as much good attention as the first one. So of course they ended up scrapping that series in favor of putting Spider-Man in the MCU, and of course they basically kind of did that already with Spider-Man 2 from basically, well, taking place 4 years after Iron Man 2 basically did feature a young Peter Parker at the time. And then of course we would officially get ourselves another Spider-Man movie out there called Homecoming. And this was the first ever Spider-Man solo film that came along in the MCU. Captain America Civil War, though, was when the character was pretty much appearing for the very first time in the MCU. Basically speaking, Tony Stark goes over to visit a small apartment building where there was Peter Parker. Basically, they have a little talk about wanting to add Spider-Man to the Avengers, and after that deal is taken, well, guess what we get? We get ourselves Tom Holland as Peter Parker, and this was, of course, one of the first ever roles that happened to be very successful for Tom Holland's career. Of course, we would get to see Tom Holland in way more media after all of these Spider-Man impressions have been laid out on the screen for Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. Of course, if I had to name several other movies out there, then well, Tom Holland would also make appearances in films like Spies in Disguise, Dolittle 2020, and then of course we're about to have a Tom Holland play Nathan Drake in the upcoming Uncharted film. Yeah, I don't necessarily know how good of a choice that was, but I'll just go along with the ride. A lot of things are pretty much different nowadays, so I guess I probably should get used to them. Well anyways, Captain America Civil War, the plotline itself, depicts Captain America having a complete and total disagreement at a political level with the Sokovian Accords that Tony Stark decides to bring up, basically only allowing a few certain things that happens with the Avengers taking place throughout their little heroic career. After the kinds of damages that they've put together with all the things that have taken place during Age of Ultron, for example, well, the Avengers are pretty much forced to only do things when they're absolutely necessary. But then, of course, there comes along Bucky, whom we know as the Winter Soldier, one of Captain America's true friends, who had apparently been alive for a while. And that was simply because of what happened in Captain America the Winter Soldier, which was released 2 years prior to Civil War. But Bucky does start to come full force in Civil War. It had been revealed that Bucky supposedly had killed Tony Stark's parents after a car wreck. The opening scene basically shows just that. A car collides with Bucky riding a motorcycle alongside it, and, well, eventually murdering them in cold blood. But it really does turn out that Bucky had been brainwashed to do all of that back in December 1991. So in a way, you could pretty much say that this is quite a twist that happens. Bucky apparently joins the good side after only realizing the truth about what had been happening. But then Captain America does try to bring out the truth to Tony, and Tony completely disregards that, trying to force Captain America to basically step aside so Bucky can be exterminated as a bit of a plot for revenge. Of course, we all know that revenge doesn't really solve everything. And with Captain America trying to basically abstain that fact, and Tony Stark completely trying to eliminate them both by any means, it really does allow for quite a devastation that happens between different members of the Avengers. I'll especially never forget the part where the two teams, Captain America's team and Tony Stark's team, they basically both come together and attempt to duke it out to find out who's better. Of course, we all know what really happens then. And the fact that Bucky and Captain America, they both try to get out with their very lives. And of course, I really have to mention the ending here. The fact that the truth actually came out with a person known as Zemo. And this person ends up getting caught by Black Panther, whom of course was played by the late, great Chadwick Boseman. R.I.P. Zemo was then taken over to a prison island where practically everything is resolved. But not before Captain America and Tony Stark end up battling each other almost to the death for the last time in the film. Cap gets the upper hand by shoving the shield into Stark's arc reactor, and man, I tell you, that is an unbelievable ending. Tony Stark, the leader of the Avengers, gets pounded to the ground, and, well, Cap ends up winning the fight, leaving the shield behind and taking Bucky with. Man, I really gotta say, that probably is by far the best that I might have seen in the series. If I really had to pick an MCU film, then this would probably be it. So by any means, I won't necessarily go into all the greater detail on the whole entire thing and just let you watch it for yourself. But if I want to give the score to this, then well, because it's a good film itself, as Marvel Studios does know what they're doing here, I feel like that this one probably does deserve itself a good score of maybe 8.3 out of 10. No higher than that, but also no lower than that. Plenty of merits to choose from, plenty of amazing actors that are on the set, plenty of unique styling, effects, fight sequences, and some pretty insane plot twists that take place. So in that sense, well, that's just pretty much what that's all about. Civil War is in fact the war between two different nations in the form of two different classes of heroes. So that's going to cut it for right now, but if you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.